Good morning, dear audience, and very good welcome to this book launching session from Winnipeg, Manitoba. It is with great pride that we are here today to celebrate our 2-year-long research culminating into a book. Within its hardcovers, it encapsulates the stories, struggles, desires, hopes, dreams, desperation of Rohingyas and ethnocultural religious inhabitants of Myanmar, popularly known as Burma. Before I go into today's event, let me do the treaty recognition. Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada is located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homelands of Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves for partnership and with the Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. The audience, we are privileged today to have amongst us former Canadian Prime Minister's Special Envoy to Myanmar conflict, Honorable Bob Rae, now Canadian Ambassador to the United Nations, and His Excellency Bangladesh High Commissioner to Canada, Dr. Khalilur Rahman. We are also joined by our advisors and special guests this morning, who consistently encouraged and supported various endeavors of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute in the past and now. Just to set up the context of today's event, since its inception in 2017, Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada has dedicated its resources and energy to research and suggest policies for Rohingya crisis transformation through peace-building efforts. It has so far organized 3 in-person seminars, I refer to pre-COVID time, of course, and over 30 webinars, bringing scholars, activists, diaspora groups, and policymakers, both from Bangladesh and Canada, into a dialogue for conflict transformation. All our webinars can be found in our website for future references. Our first detailed research was published in January 2020 as a book titled The Rohingya Crisis, Analysis, Responses, and Peacebuilding Avenues. It has covered a brief historical analysis of the conflict, and most importantly, and possibly the only book that highlighted the geopolitics of the conflict, explaining the big fours, China, India, Japan, and Russia's interest in the conflict. After its publication, we have had reasonable success that prompted us to undertake the second project in early 2020. But this time we decided to focus more at the micro-level analysis of the conflict, specifically researching more on host countries' predicaments. This time we also connected scholars researching from Bangladesh and UK, and we are happy to share that the scholars from Dhaka University, North-South University, Jahangirnagar University, and University of Dundee and Bournemouth, UK, have responded to our request and contributed to the chapters. Lexington Books, an imprint of Rowman and Littlefield, published both the books. The current book's title is The Rohingya Crisis and the Two-Faced God of Janus, What Lies Ahead. Roman mythology presents Janus as the god of beginning and transition of gates, doors, and doorways. He stands in the gap between barbarism and civilization, rural country and city life, and youth and adulthood. Because he sees both the present and the past, he has two faces. The term Janus was commonly used to represent change and transitions, such as the passage from the past to the future. We look at the crisis as rooted in the past, while suggest conflict transformation processes for the future. Such a future includes not only Rohingya people, but also host countries and international communities that have inadvertently become a party in the conflict. The coup d'etat in Myanmar on February 1st, 2021, as most conflict analysts perceive, has changed the political and social landscape in Myanmar for a considerable period of time. It has already diminished any hope for return of Rohingyas to Rakhine state. However, our book doesn't limit its topical focus only to the current time. Rather, it sets a path toward a futuristic vision for sustainable conflict transformation mapping for the Rohingyas. This book provides the context, data, and policy recommendations necessary to move forward in aiding Rohingyas advocating for the realization of their human rights, citizenship, and creating a sustainable future for them in Myanmar. Nonetheless, When a parallel disaster occurs, international communities' attention gets depleted, and it can only be hoped that the Rohingyas are not forgotten from the ever-busy highway of humanitarian assistance need. Further, the authors of this book suggest that maintaining a status quo should not be an option in this crisis. The Rohingyas deserve better, as we all do, and it is our moral responsibility to support any measures of conflict transformation. Dear audience, today we have planned to listen from our co-founder, author contributors, special and chief guests. And the way we plan to run this session now is we're going to invite our chief guest, Honorable Bob Rae, to speak a few words and share his thoughts on the conflict, followed by our special guest, His Excellency, Dr. Khalilur Rahman. Then I will invite our co-founder and author's contributor and our special guest, most importantly, Mr. Saifullah Muhammad, who just joined with us. Thank you, Saifullah, for coming and making a busy within a busy schedule. Thank you so much. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me have the privilege to welcome our chief guest, Honorable Bob Rae. Sir, floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm sure, like all of your guests, I look forward a great deal to reading the studies that you've done and to engaging more with the center about what the prospects for improving the lives of the people of the region and of resolving the conflict really are. I was asked by the Prime Minister in 2017, right after the mass forcible deportation of close to 1 million people from Rakhine State to the area known as Cox's Bazar. And my job was to visit the camp and to talk with officials both in Dhaka and in Naypyidaw, and to report to the Prime Minister for a meeting that he was going to be having with Aung San Suu Kyi in Da Nang in Vietnam. I have to say that my life has not been the same since, for a simple reason, and that is that once this conflict gets into your bones, it's very hard to leave it. And so I have maintained not only a strong interest, but I've also been engaging a great deal with scholars, with experts from around the world, with people who are actively engaged, the special envoys, to officials in the UN, officials with the UNHCR and many of the specialized agencies of the UN. And it's an ongoing mission of mine. I chair in New York the group of friends of the Rohingya of Myanmar and Bangladesh. We are continuing our meetings and continuing our discussions and our briefings from experts. My report can be found online. It's publicly available on the GAC, the Global Affairs Canada website. Just to remind you, I came to 4 conclusions, 4 main areas of recommendation. The first one was that we needed to continue to focus on improving the condition of the Rohingya people living in Cox's Bazar and living in Rakhine State. In fact, living anywhere. And I'll have a few things to say about that. The second was to really do what we could to understand better the causes of the conflict, the underlying political situation in Myanmar that had given rise to the forcible deportation, of which this was not the first. In fact, deportations have been taking place since the early 1990s. And so they needed to really understand better the nature of the conflict. And as our host has said, since the coup in Myanmar, there are new causes for conflict and there are new issues that are come to bear. The third was to deal with the issue of impunity and accountability. And the fourth is to make a strong recommendation that Canada needed to have a focused program in which we would work across government and in which we would also work with others. One of my first visits in 2017 was to New York, where I met with a group of friends under Canadian leadership. And I took over that job from Mr. Blanchard in 2020, as you will know. I don't want to take too long because there are many other speakers who know far more and have much more to say. I would say that on the first recommendation, I still feel very strongly that we should not make the mistake of sacrificing this generation of refugees to on the altar of, well, we have to find the ideal solution. Obviously, the ideal solution is for the refugees to be able to return to the land that they call home, where they can live safely and securely as full citizens of Myanmar. That's the ideal solution, living in peace and security in the lands that they've occupied for many generations. But we need to understand that that is, again, as our host has said, that is not likely to happen quickly. And I'm concerned that we can't lose sight of the needs for education, for work, and for well-being for those people who are either in Bangladesh or still in Rakhine. Let's not forget there are several 100,000 Rohingya still living in Rakhine State, and there are many living in extremely difficult conditions in the Sitwe IDP camp. And I am concerned that the rhetoric is still very much focused on what I call the ideal solution. But we have to recognize that if we look at the global refugee situation, which I was also later asked to study by the Prime Minister, we still see there are a great many people who are living in refugee camps for much longer. So it's not just that the refugee and displaced issue is now becoming much more universal condition. It's also that these camps last for a long time, exist for a long time. And so the question of, well, how should they be operated? How should they be run? What should be the basic relationship between the host country and those who are in the camps? How do we improve the condition of people who are living in the host country, as well as people who are living in the camps? How do we leverage funds from the World Bank and from the International Monetary Fund, from global institutions, to try to provide that assistance? And that remains an issue. Second recommendation, the underlying condition in Myanmar is much worse. And there is effectively a civil war underway now in Myanmar. The Tatmadaw is conducting itself like an occupying army. Much evidence of crimes against humanity. And we've done a good job, I think, of gathering evidence and information. And over the next few months and years, there will be a succession of legal cases brought. There already is a case being brought to the ICJ in The Hague. I have reason to believe there will be other cases that will be well documented and have been well prepared that will deal with the issue of accountability. So on the fourth point, I think we have continued to maintain a focused interest in Canada. The Prime Minister is about to announce the new envoy. The Prime Minister has announced a continued 3-year commitment that will be renewed. And that will make a difference in terms of Canada's role, together with a number of other countries, in providing assistance, help, and advocacy for those who are living in camps. I just as I said at the beginning, this crisis has affected me in many ways. I've become good friends with a great many members of the community here in Canada and in the United States and in the UK. I think we have to keep our eyes still on a focused approach on what we can do right away and what we can do in the longer term, and understand that the ultimate resolution is still not there, but we have to do more to ensure the well-being of the Rohingya people, and frankly, of all the people living in the region as we go through this crisis. And that, I think, should remain a critical focus for Canadian public policy. We've lived through COVID. We're now living through climate change, which is severely impacting the region, severely impacting Bangladesh, the camp, and northern Myanmar. And we are experiencing the impact of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the disruption of the world food system, dramatic increase in prices of food, but also the availability of food. And I think we have to understand the critical, what that poses to the international system, what it poses to the international refugee system, and what it poses in terms of the humanitarian crisis in the world. The level, when I came here to New York, the budget of the World Food Program was about $3 billion. It is now $9 billion, and the need is estimated at somewhere between 15 and 20. So we need to understand the seriousness of the crisis which we're facing globally. And unfortunately, the Rohingya are now part of a much bigger global crisis. I know that I met yesterday, say to the ambassador who I see on my screen, I met yesterday with Rabab Fatima, who's the ambassador who's leaving her post to take on a serious undersecretary generalship position at the UN. She's eminently qualified to do it. And her final words to me: don't forget the Rohingya, don't forget Bangladesh. And I said, not at all. And I think it's extremely important that the people of Bangladesh know that for Canada, this remains a very important issue and something that we spend time on, we spend money on, and we spend resources, really trying to focus attention on what more can be done. And that won't change. I know the Prime Minister remains personally very committed. I spoke to him before he went off to the Commonwealth meeting to talk about this. And I just want to assure everyone here that the work that is being done, the work that's being prepared, I think is work that should help us to develop better policies and also to understand better how we can make progress. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you. I will stay to listen to as much as I can, and then I will have to leave for yet another meeting. But I appreciate very much the opportunity to join you, and congratulate the authors on the publication of the book. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Bobre, for your kind remarks, and it is really encouraging to listen to the activities going on in New York to support Rohingya and Bangladesh simultaneously. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome now His Excellency, the Canadian Bangladesh High Commissioner in Canada, Dr. Khalil Rahman, for his remarks and his thoughts on this crisis. Dr. Khalil, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kausar. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor and pleasure to be with Honorable Bobre today on the screen. I have not read the book. I have not seen it. But as I just heard from Dr. Kausar, among other things, he talked about these predicaments of the host country in sheltering these forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals. And I also heard Honorable Bobre. I know he's so passionate and his own interest, as well as special envoy and also as permanent representative of Canada in New York, his continuing support and engagement in the resolution of this crisis. I just like to make a few points because Honorable Bobre has clearly outlined the expectations from the host country, especially about the learning and livelihood of these forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals. I think who are on the screen, you are well aware of the government's position on these very issues. So I really don't want to comment on those issues. Only thing is that, Bangladesh, I as High Commissioner in Canada, wherever I go, starting from the official to honorable members of parliament, honorable senators, they all tell me that how engaged Canada is, how sincere Canada is to this specific issue. So I'm very grateful as a person and on behalf of the government that Canada remains so engaged till now, and hopefully, as we have heard, Honorable Bobre, they will be engaged in this issue. having said that, I always say one thing. If we look at the report of the Honorable Bobre, he has also spelled it out, this unity and accountability. I think this is one area Bangladesh expects Canada to play a more effective role. We want to see the outcome of the case in the ICJ brought out by Gambia, and Bangladesh as a not, I mean, I should say still a poor country is really unable to bear the cost of this case alone. And thank you also Canada for their engagement in providing legal support, as well as from other countries and of course the YC countries. But I think Canada needs to do more on this very specific issue. While we appreciate the support we are receiving from Canada and also from other developed partners, but we must not forget that I think many of you here, you are aware of the fact that according to the research of the independent organization called CPD, it is not a government estimate. Bangladesh government spend $1.22 billion every year to host this FEC, and forget about the environmental impact and other impact. While we appreciate the humanitarian support, we must not forget the fact that the ultimate solution is their safe and dignified return to their homeland, Myanmar, in the Rakhine state. So that is where I think the international community is failing quite miserably, I should say. The level of engagement we can see in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, we don't see that for the Rohingyas. And while we know that it is not a forgotten case, it will not be forgotten, but certainly the attention is not to the level that it deserves. So that is where I think our developed partner needs to focus a bit more. Dr. Kausar, you also said, I think in the end, the same thing, that they are not forgotten by the world. I mean, basically you have mentioned from the humanitarian assistance. This is required, and this we are getting from a lot of our partners, not only Bangladesh spending, but I think time will come if the issue is not resolved as quickly as possible. I think this helpless, forcibly displaced human nationals case will be forgotten. So this is our concern. I know you have our concerns. About our concerns for in certain areas, including the learning and livelihood. And we are fully aware of the World Bank's project, World Bank proposal. I believe Honorable Harjit Sazan will be visiting Bangladesh soon, and he'll be also promoting this package. We have our own assessment of the package. We are always receptive. We are always working with our developed partner. We will be working, but we have to also accept the fact that we have our own concern, and these are legitimate concerns. Bangladesh, should not be allowed to be a country, a volatile country, what we have seen in South Asia. And I think not only Bangladesh, the world and the developed partners also should not afford to allow Bangladesh to be in that state. I think the book also talked about, as I heard, Bangladesh's relation with Japan and China. They are great partners for Bangladesh, there is no doubt, but we must not forget that they are also a great partner for Myanmar. These are the two countries, they also invested heavily, even in this very undemocratic, oppressive regimes, I mean, in this country that is run by this oppressive regime. So we cannot stop it. So I think every country has their own interest, and in the middle, these hapless FDMNS are caught. And we know, and we all know, very well, our rather big country, Russia's role in this thing. I believe our Western partners may and should play a more proactive role in really resolving the issue as quickly as possible. I won't be taking much time, but one thing I like to bring to the kind attention of Honorable Bobre, that we understand there is a humanitarian assistance for Bangladesh, 15.3 million. Also, that is 10.3 million for the Rohingyas inside Myanmar, but I think there is additional support required for in food sector area because of this food crisis worldwide. So this is something I would like to bring to your attention, and this can be appropriately communicated to your government so that Canadian government can be further engaged in this food sector issue with, of course, accountability. This is our request. I have conveyed this request to them. We also want that, so long they are in Bangladesh, they should be taken care of. With that, I like to congratulate these authors who have contributed in this book. I believe this book will present the challenges Bangladesh is facing in hosting these hapless Rohingya people. And I believe the world will come forward to really not only help this FDMNS, and will do something more concrete for their repatriation with safety and dignity that will be also helpful for Bangladesh and helpful for the world community to ensure the stability in South Asia. That is very important. Bangladesh, with proud, I should say that this is the most secular country in South Asia, and we like to remain like that. We believe, in diversity, and we are against any kind of extremism in our country. And we need the support and partnership from our developed partner. Honorable Bobre, I know you are in New York. You'll be also our ambassador there. Rabab is around, and I think Mohit should be going. I'm sure you'll know him very soon. And I know this case will never be forgotten. For you, you'll be always working for their permanent solution. With this expectation, I'd like to end. Thank you so much for once again for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Very encouraging words from His Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, let's bring our co-founder and one of the editors of this book and chapter contributor, Dr. Hilal Muhyiddin, into the discussion. And then we'll follow and invite our contributors. And before you really start your presentation, please briefly introduce yourself so that we all know your background and where from you're coming. Thank you so much, Dr. Hilal Muhyiddin. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kausar. Distinguished guests and discussions, Honorable His Excellency Honorable Bobre, and His Excellency Honorable High Commissioner of Bangladesh to Canada. It is indeed very difficult to present such a comprehensive book contents in a few minutes, but I will not be taking that long. But to make our time, I would rather prefer to read out a self-explanatory statement that Dr. Kausar has already read out before, but I am just reiterating. The statement reads, the authors of this book look at the crisis as rooted in the past, while suggesting conflict transformation processes for the future. So it sets the ground for the book. And then such a future, quote unquote, a future includes not only Rohingya people, but also host countries. That's the most important part for us. And international communities that have inadvertently become a party in the crisis. So there are threefold vision in a nutshell, if I want to explain it. Not explain it, just I will be describing. So one, to apprise readers and followers of the crises, new conflict dimensions that need urgent attention for sustainable conflict transformation. And then second, to share some of the conflict dynamics emerging between the host community and the Rohingyas in the southern part of Bangladesh. Number three, to motivate the international community to take more, quote unquote, involved action concerning the primary mode of conflict intervention, that is to initiate Rohingya repatriation. I think that's the most important part. So here comes the Janus metaphor as we used here. We, the editors and authors, all believe that dwelling in the past will not really contribute positively to the crisis, especially in terms of conflict transformation. So rather, a forward-looking policy and actions through prescribing peace-building initiatives might stop another protracted conflict from being added to the list. Now, one may ask a question, why did we need to write this book? As Dr. mentioned, already explained before, that we have already had a comprehensive one that was giving a clear picture of the contemporary geopolitical dynamics of the crisis, at the same time the livelihood crisis of the Rohingyas previously, but we did not see the new emergent crises that are taking additional toll on the problem. So we just took some reasons that served as the base for this book. Now, number one, how long will that, it is our question at this moment, and in this book we tried to cover it, and if I just summarize it, probably the main essence of the book will be that some questions. So number one, how long will the global community keep overlooking impunity of the Myanmar military despite their perpetration of the world's worst human rights violation? It is our perception at this stage that probably they are enjoying impunity, especially the Myanmar military. Then question number two, whether international communities are really sincere and determined enough to impose upon Myanmar bindings to start the Rohingya repatriation process with full citizenship rights. Question number three that we are posing in this book, that how the people in the host community perceive the future. That's very important, and it's a lurking crisis we see every day, especially the cost of the conflict. So the host community people are quite afraid that they would have to pay the lion's share of the cost, and international actors would gradually disappear. They just run away at some point, leaving the country in a dismay. And then on top of that, we are seeing newer geopolitical and global health dynamics that really complicated the situation over the last years. Number one, Covid, we know that. Then number two, the Myanmar military's takeover of the state power on February 1st, 2001. Third, the brutal military crackdown of domestic resistance, well-formed domestic resistance in Myanmar. So all these are some of the signs that are making us think and make a forward-looking strategy, taking into consideration all these realities, emerging realities, not only the realities. Number four, a national unity government, we have seen that it is formed, but how it is really functioning, whether it is getting international support or whether it will really create any impact in the geopolitics or in having democracy or Rohingya repatriation is a very big question. No one is asking this question, that whether these things are being taken into consideration. So our question is, a national, we have seen this development to that a national unity government was formed. And then fifth, to our perception, it is still limited sanctions on Myanmar by the Western powers after military takeover, including the UN. So it's a limited sanctions to our understanding. We need to be more proactive and more concerted in our efforts, probably. This is our assumption. Then China, Russia, India, and Singapore's support to Myanmar junta, it's remaining there. And they're terming the military takeover as an internal matter, just avoiding the issue. That is a big issue, and as our His Excellency Honorable High Commissioner mentioned, that Bangladesh is spending $1.2 billion a year against them. It's a big amount for a country like Bangladesh, especially given Bangladesh's economic condition at this stage. Then another one, seventh, that we see that Myanmar's carefree attitude, despite the ICJ's interim verdict, Myanmar tends to, like, oh, we don't care, whatever happens, let it go as it is. So then the global attention shift towards the Ukraine war. It's one very important thing. And then the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, there is an earthquake, all these things are just coming in, and the Rohingya issue is becoming forgotten. International communities are giving much less attention to Rohingya issues because they are dealing with some other issues. But all these things will keep coming in the future as well. So how will we solve this problem? How will we think it? So this book is divided into two parts. In one, I will be taking 30 seconds only. First, we focused on Rohingya diaspora, conflict intervention and security. And the second one is COVID-19 and its impact. And the final word is that we are looking forward for a forward-looking strategy, taking into consideration all these emerging problems and some of the unintended consequences that will be created in the future. Probably we did not see them yet, but we are foreseeing some other problems that will be coming. So we'll have to devise something, and international communities need to be very much more proactive, and they should not just keep overlooking this, taking into their focus only the Ukraine war or other international issues. That's important too, but at the same time, this is no less important because this is the biggest refugee problem and it was imposed on Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Helal Mohiuddin. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for our contributors to speak. And as I mentioned, please briefly introduce yourself as you begin. The order that I would like to follow is to invite Dr. Bulbul Siddiqui first, then Dr. Mehdi as a follow-up, and then if Dr. Rafiq is still with us, then we'll invite him. And Dr. Bulbul Siddiqui, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kausif, and distinguished guest, His Excellency High Commissioner of Bangladesh and Canada, and other distinguished guests. And it's an honor to be part of this interesting book project. So the chapter that I mean, one of my co-authors and I wrote about the impact of COVID-19 and the belief system of the Rohingya. So although it looks a little different than the broader problematic scenario of the Rohingyas, but we'll come back to that point briefly as well. So we wanted to see how COVID-19 created further challenges for the Rohingyas. So we know that there is a very common understanding that, and there is projection that as a vulnerable community, Rohingya would be suffering more because of COVID-19, because of their vulnerabilities and lack of appropriate attention by the global community, and there is a concern that probably Bangladesh will not be able to address this issue properly. But surprisingly, when we looked at the Rohingya community, so COVID-19 wasn't that devastating as it was predicted or projected. But what it had left after, like even we're recovering from COVID-19 at this point, we've seen that the Rohingya community suffered in other ways because of lockdown and because of other issues. For example, education activities were not properly addressed during the time of lockdown and past 2 years. And also, there's many humanitarian actors, they also couldn't go with their essential service because of lockdown and restrictions because of COVID-19. So that created further vulnerabilities for the Rohingya communities in the ground. And as you know, that there are already existing problems for them that is there. For example, they're also suffering from various health issues, and domestic violence is very high among the Rohingya refugee community. And education has become a challenge, and the level of education we're trying to provide that is basically not formal, we can say more non-formal kind of education, and also repatriation finally. And perhaps you know that in a few weeks ago, the Rohingya youth and children, they organized a movement called Cholo Bari, Cholo Fire Jai, or Go Home movement. So it also shows that it's like hell living in refugee camps. And as a host community, host country, Bangladesh has been doing tremendously good. But at the same time, the way they're living, it's not like living at their home. So that's again creating vulnerability. So that's our main focus of this chapter. And finally, just to briefly mention a few points that these our other speakers already mentioned about how the attention can be shifted because of global geopolitical context and also a global refugee crisis. So if you look into the Ukrainian crisis, so until recently, we've seen that the US government declared that it was a genocide, but before that it was not recognized. And it came in the context that when they also have declared that they will take 100,000 Ukrainian refugees to the US. And at the same time, if you look into the other sides, like in Germany, they have evacuated shelters to shelter the Ukrainian Rohingya, refugees, and they evacuated Afghan refugees from certain places. So that shows how the global and Western community is seeing in a biased way, like there is you can say that refugee or elite refugee and vulnerable refugees. So Rohingya have become that kind of vulnerable communities. And if we continue to like neglect the issue of repatriation, then we can see that repatriation delayed can be ended up having repatriation denied. So, and also final word that I'd like to say that social cohesion perspective, if you look into this context, so we already have witnessed that demonizing the Rohingya is there in, among the host community. So, and cohesive relationship is not there very much like host communities. They already have seen like, they have a sense about like, or they have a feeling about neglect is already there. So from that perspective, we also like to say that this is a time for Bangladesh as well to have a very strong position, and also to know that Bangladesh is doing tremendously well, but at the same time, we need to have a very comprehensive refugee policies, like we were repeatedly witnessing Rohingyas influx in Bangladesh since 1970s, but there remains a gap and lack. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bulbul Siddiqui, for the chapter is very well written, and I would encourage if you have time, please have a look. He has succinctly covered the aspects that he just described. Let me welcome Dr. Mehdi Chaudhry to the floor. Floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Kausar Ahmed. Yeah, I mean, there are all distinguished guests are here, and we actually listened to some of them, and I think they were really very enlightening. And I would also like to listen from some other people. But obviously, Dr. Kausar has invited me to like say something about my book chapter. I will be talking about this. So now I have received the book, and I just have received the book. So I have not managed to look at the chapters yet, but it's about the production, everything, the quality, it's a very high quality book. And I also must appreciate actually Dr. Kausar and Helal Mohuddin. Specifically, I was communicating with Dr. Kausar is that actually he's a very good editor, you know, like we authors, sometimes we are occupied with so many other things and we are a bit, so he actually persuaded us to write this chapter. And so I'm happy that I have managed to become part of this project. Now, another one thing about I would like to appreciate about this book is that this is giving a platform to, if you look at the authorship of the book, actually many of them are like coming from Bangladesh. Okay, maybe they are working some in other places, like I'm working in the UK, but they are Bangladeshi. So they are offering a different perspective to things that you don't see from when you look at the, like when you hear from like some international authors. So that perspective is very important. So, and this book is actually providing that perspective, but obviously it's very important that we read those chapters and what they're saying. And then obviously we take some actions based on that. If we just write something and nobody is actually listening to what we're writing, then it's really going nowhere. It's very, very important that people read them and also like follow up with some actions. Now, about our book chapter, I have two co-authors, and so I mean the chapter originated from a bit a wider project that we looked at the repatriation possibility of Rohingya community. And that was, and we have a journal article actually now under submission, which covers far more than what is in the book chapter. So I'm going to just a bit summarize what we are doing on this. So we looked at essentially repatriation. Is it possible at this moment for Rohingyas to return? And also we looked at in our wider project, actually the role of the international community, specifically international humanitarianism. So, I mean, that have they played the correct role? That we are saying again and again that we need to look at the future also. So now listen, if we actually, if you look back, so we see that the crisis that we are seeing now is that Rohingyas, they cannot return. Actually, that the international community could foresee that well in advance of the crisis. Before 2017, the crisis was there, and the Rohingya, they were coming all the time to Bangladesh, and they are getting persecuted. Many things were happening there, but still, no action was taken at that time to prevent that crisis in the first place. So that's really very important. We need to pay more attention to the country of origin. We are always talking about the Rohingya community or the refugees, and we are talking about the host. How about the country of origin? Pay a bit more attention to that. Look at whether they are creating problems, and then it's not just create a more new crisis. Try to solve the problem at the origin if possible. So that should be the lesson that we should learn, that we already have the crisis now, Rohingya refugee crisis, and in near future, obviously, we don't see that we don't see the possibility of return because it's already a protective situation. But there are other refugee crises they are brewing in other parts of the world, and try to prevent them. The refugee, like once the refugee, they cross the border, they cannot just go back. It depends on the country of origin. If they don't want to take anybody back, that's not going to happen. So that's what we actually mentioned about that. So if you look at the refugee convention, it's all about the host country, what host country should be doing, and like that. But we do need to pay more attention to the country of origin, who is actually creating the crisis. So that is actually missing a lot from this discourse. So we try to really focus on, and we looked at about the current crisis given the situation in Myanmar at this moment. Obviously, we really don't see it's possible to have voluntary safe return, but obviously I do believe, and we do believe, that that's the best solution. And actually international community should be really push for that, try for that, and try to create conditions so that Rohingyas, they can safely go back to their country of origin. That's the best solution, even it may not look ideal. Actually, that's the ideal solution, because otherwise, if it is forgotten, then it will create much more problem, and that you do also want to avoid. And think about also one thing is that what Rohingyas they have attained by coming to Bangladesh. So in Myanmar, they were in a very destitute situation, and in Bangladesh, they have the same situation. It's not that they are better off in Bangladesh. So they have really very limited access to life things that like, say, even education, very limited access to health service. They cannot move, all things. So nothing has changed actually by Rohingyas coming to Bangladesh. So it's not only what happens that they have managed to save their life at that point because they were facing a genocide. So these things should be considered. Actually, and best solution is that if they can go back to their country, and if the country actually can become safe for them, then that will be the best outcome, and then we should really try for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Mehdi. I would say a very well-rounded discussion. And with Dr. Mehdi, we have had one webinar in the past discussing more about the game theory approach that Dr. Mehdi developed. I would strongly encourage audience, if you have time, please have a look into his ideas about repatriation. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Dr. Rafiq. Dr. Rafiq, sir, if you are here with us.
Yeah, Dr. Kausar bhai, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not in a position to open my camera. If you please allow me to say something without camera.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Kausar Ahmed and Professor Halal Muhyiddin for your support and taking huge pain to publish this groundbreaking book in the context of Rohingya issues. Particularly the different aspects have been discussed by this book. Ladies and gentlemen, this is MD Rafiqul Islam. I'm teaching at the Department of Peace and Conflict Studies, University of Dhaka. Actually, I co-authored this chapter. The name of the chapter is Intergroup Conflict Among Rohingya Displaced People in Bangladesh. My co-authors are Muhammad Majidul Haq. He has been working with me for the last 2 years as a research associate. And my another co-author is Umme Wara. She has been teaching as an assistant professor in the Department of Criminology in Dhaka University. Actually, we try to explore why the displaced people, I mean the Rohingya people living in Cox's Bazar camps are engaged in intra-group conflicts, I mean conflicts among themselves. And the manifestation of these conflicts is murder, abduction, extortion, intimidation, and human rights violation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to mention here that we have been working in Cox's Bazar for last 2 years, more than 2 years. And while conducting our research in Cox's Bazar, we actually experienced that these people are engaged in some forms of conflict. And although the international community and Bangladesh government are continuously providing support to improve their livelihood conditions, improve their community relationship, rather they are engaged in conflict. That's why we actually thought that we should explore why these people, as they are displaced people, they are living in very stressed and very inhuman condition in Bangladesh, but why they are involved in conflict. So exploring this answer, actually, we engaged ourselves to write this chapter. Actually, the background, we said that, these people are helpless and stateless people. They don't have enough opportunity to enjoy the human rights situation, and they have been living in very cramped condition in Bangladesh without getting the basic human rights. But why these people are engaged in conflict within themselves? They should have been peaceful. They should have been united, and they should have some cooperation and collaboration among themselves to improve their condition and to achieve, greater support from the international community in Bangladesh as well. But these people are very, rough in sometimes. They are conflict with the host people. They are killing each other, and different statistics shows that murder, abduction, and some other forms of gender-based violence are very active and extensive in the Rohingya camp. So we explored why this kind of conflict are happening. Applying, a mixed method approach, including information from the key informant who are extensively working in the Rohingya camps. The people from the government part and people of from the Rohingya part. The Mazis who actually lead the community there, and with the focus group discussion and exploring and scrutinizing the lot of secondary source of information, we actually developed this chapter in order to understand and answer the central research questions of why and how the Rohingya displaced people in Cox's Bazar engage in often lethal conflicts among themselves. So in order to answer these questions, we have actually assessed different literature regarding conflict analysis and conflict management. And our findings is that there is a greater power struggle among themselves there, and poverty is another cause that is pushing themselves to compete for extracting resources, which is fundamentally causing conflict among themselves. Another major cause is, the trauma and psychological stress. They actually got this trauma and psychological stress when they were in their country and excessively tortured by the Myanmar army. The availability of crime, drug, and women trafficking in the camps are another major reasons for generating conflict among themselves. Economic issue is also a major cause because these people actually, they want to leave the inhuman condition. They always want to escape from this situation, and they want to go to Malaysia and some other countries. And that's why they try to extract some economic benefit, economic research, economic positions using any forms of, any kinds of illegal activities or legal activities. So this economic competition actually pushed them to engage in conflict situation. And we have also found that the domestic violence, relation with the local political elites, this is very hidden, but we have found that local political elites sometimes use the Rohingya people, and that also generate or escalate conflict. The lethal conflict. Unemployment is another cause. Young people, half of the people in Rohingya camps, they are young people. They don't have employment and job. So these people, they don't have anything to make kawas or to pass idle time. And that's why they sometimes or more often engage in conflict. So fear of insecurity of relocation, means the relocation from Cox's Bazar to Bhashan or somewhere else, So these are the causes that is generating conflict. We actually explored in this chapter. And we are sure that this chapter will help the policymaker to resolve the conflict and ensure the betterment for the Rohingya people. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a very well-written chapter as well, underlying the dynamics of the conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, we are absolutely at the last end. We have two patrons, very important persons for CRRIC's life. We are going to invite them shortly for their concluding remarks. And Dr. Lloyd Cornelson would be speaking first, followed by David Newman. But before I invite and bring them for their part, let me have this privilege to welcome the only Rohingya person amongst us this morning, Mr. Saifullah Muhammad, who is an example of leadership amongst the young Rohingyas in Canada. He has co-founded Rohingya Development Center, with who we cooperate for almost 2 years now. And he's also going to visit two of our education projects in the camps very soon. And we are so proud of having Mr. Saifullah Muhammad. Saifullah, very briefly, as you understand, we are running out of time. Just introduce yourself and just says few words about the hopes and dreams of your people as described in this book. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Koser, and hello, Mohideen, for your dedications and hard work to make this book a reality. And I also thank our High Commissioners and Bobri and all the contributors for these books. I haven't read these books fully yet, but when I read all the chapters, I found like every problems and solutions that the policymaker needs are in this one. And in a short, we have heard today and will continue to hear maybe the conflict in Myanmar is based deep-rooted causes that are not immediately apparent. Even to witness such as myself as a Rohingya or the experts like you, it is easy to focus on the latest political discussion on humanitarian atrocity that dominates the headlines. We watch like erupting volcano and try to fight the damage. Meanwhile, the plagues continue to shift under the feet, and we barely notice that. The root cause remain unseen and unknowns, and everyone mentioned about that. The only Rohingya problem is a problems without any solutions. No one knows the Myanmar government will take back all these peoples and how long it takes. And among all the problems, as our High Commissioner is here, it is no coincidence that the dictatorships always limit the ability of their peoples to gain higher educations like the Burmese government did. So people without an education have difficulty in knowing how to organize and pull the lever of power. With education, on the other hand, a wall of opportunity opens. For example, me, I was born in Burma, brought up in Bangladesh, refugee camps, and in Malaysia. When I came to Canada, I got an opportunity, and I completed my graduate studies in a peace and conflict. Just now, I'm working with the government of Canada as a coordinator for equity, diversity, and inclusions. So thank you, Bangladesh, for giving me opportunity for educations when I was there. Thank you, Canada, for giving me this opportunity. And you see, the Rohingya or refugee, we do have a lot of asset in the refugee camps. We do have a lot of good, young, talented peoples. And my last point is, we all are fighting, so working, struggling to solve this Rohingya crisis. There's a lot to solve, but limiting their opportunity as a Rohingya is not an option. And we, as a Rohingya, we always thank the government of Bangladesh for giving us shelter, for giving us opportunity, for saving our life. So that's why I would like to request to all of you who are all from Bangladesh to kindly not to forget. And it is the nature of the world of the people. When we have new job, we forget the old one, like you mentioned, in different crises all over the world. So as we are here, I would like to request you to kindly just highlight and then push other governments or policymakers to work on the Rohingya crisis and bring a solution. Thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Kausar.
Thank you, Saifullah.
Sir, can I get 1 minute, it's possible? I'm sorry.
Sir, please.
Yeah, that was my first basically on-screen meeting with Honorable Bobley. I didn't embarrass him on saying certain things, but still my respected friend David and Lloyd, you're here. I know in a country like Canada, always you can convey the message in different ways to those who can make policy changes or who can make the difference. I know Saifullah Muhammad through Rohingya network. What I feel is that it is frustrating being a Rohingya, living in this country, having a Canadian legal entity that's citizenship or PR, and thinking of the brothers, sisters living in the camps or in Rakhine State. It is very painful. And that's why I believe their numbers is really not big. But I think people in this country, policymakers in this country are sympathetic to them. Maybe they are not able to do enough, which I also feel. I don't see, I have never observed the level of engagement that they are now for people from Ukraine. They are sending planes to bring them to Canada. So I'm not saying that they have their own priorities, own interest. Every country has that, and Bangladesh has every right to also look at its own national interest. But I think the Rohingya network, no matter how small they are here, they can, I think, do a lot of things, to do more for the Rohingyas. Because Canada as a country, I mean, they're not like the USA or not like the UK, but they have this soft power, I believe. Their words, their decision also matters for NATO alliance or G7 or G20 group. But unfortunately, Bangladesh is a great friend of India, China, Japan, as I mentioned. But when it comes to Rohingya, they keep quiet because they have their own national interest. I believe that what is happening in Myanmar, in Rakhine State today, it can happen in any country. There are minorities in every country. They can be easily pushed out from this country. So this is one thing I think Canada and West must recognize and must act appropriately, accordingly. So this is what I wanted to tell Honorable Bobre, but I think he would have been embarrassed to just share this from me when we meet first time, because he's a great friend of Bangladesh, a great friend of Rohingya, and he's doing a good job in New York. But the level of engagement is definitely not desirable, and definitely it is fading out, fading away, and it will at some point, I should say, stop. So no matter this recognition issue what the Myanmar oppressive regime tries to use, I think with due respect, I worked in the UN system for almost 20 years, 19 plus years. I know how UN system functions. You know, whoever has got the UNHCR identity, there is no more verification process. The West must come up with effective, measures to compel the oppressive, repressive Myanmar regime to at least take them immediately and as soon as possible. Why there should be verification process? Why there should be this, so-called, identity of nationality or citizenship issue? They have been verified by the UNHCR, by the UN system, who they are most trustworthy entity organization by all developed nations, developed countries. So why, they should depend on Myanmar to identify. And Saifullah Muhammad, I'm sorry to say, but, people in Myanmar still, they are very fond of or supportive of Aung San Suu Kyi. So is our developed partner. I think this obsession must go. I think she is the one who harmed most to the Rohingya population. The Western countries still murmur about her role, what she said, what she did in the court of ICJ. So, these things, Western countries always conveniently tries to forget and forgive and not to remember. So, Saifullah Muhammad, me and Bangladesh as a country, especially our Honorable Prime Minister, we are fully sympathetic to Rohingya people. And that's why and how she extended her arms to embrace them. And still she's supporting them. That's why I always tell the Western Committee, especially in Canada, that she's the leader who should be supported by the West to lead this country and to lead this region, I must say. Bangladesh is the only secular country that affords the spirit of diversity. There are many countries in the region who are by constitution secular, but in practice, you can see in your own eyes and you can observe what is happening. I'm not saying that nothing happens in Bangladesh, but the government is pumped, government is determined, government is committed to eradicate any form of extremism, any form of radicalization in Bangladesh, and upholding and promoting this diversity and secularism. So that's why Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, no matter what kind of government she leads, it can be national government, it can be government of her own party, or it can be government of many parties. She is the leader who is needed there. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity once again to speak. I wanted to say all these things in front of Honorable Bobre, but I thought it would be embarrassing for him. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Koser, only a few seconds. Thank you so much, sir. We are really a very handful of Rohingya in Canada. So we do have not few graduates or expert peoples in Canada, but we do have very good relationship with all level of governments, even Global Affairs and Bobre. He's like my mentor. I always talk to him, and we need your support. We don't know what's happening in Bangladesh, what's going on, what Bangladesh needs. That's why we are talking with Dr. Koser, discussing with him for research projects or other projects or anything policy makings departments. If we try to push the government, we need to know that. So that's why we are trying to collaborate with all of you. And if we can work together, it is very easy to approach to the governments to ask for them. And even they told us, even when I met with the Prime Minister, he told me, if you suggest us to do anything for Rohingya, if we are not doing, then criticize us. Before telling us anything, please don't criticize. So that's why we are trying to work together with all the experts from Bangladesh. We are young people, so we need your expertise, your advice to work and go on. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Saifullah, for the complimentary remarks. His Excellency's remarks are also absolutely valuable. So our two patrons are waiting so patiently. We are so grateful for their patience. Dr. Lloyd Carnelson is a very important person in CRRIC's life. He has hosted Conflict and Resilience Research Institute in Global College, University of Winnipeg. Without his patronage, we would have not been there. He is my also mentor, and it is a privilege to welcome Dr. Lloyd Carnelson to have his remarks. And he has also endorsed the book. Once you have the hard copies, you will find Dr. Lloyd Carnelson kindly mentioned about the content of the book. Dr. Lloyd, floor is yours, sir.
No problem. I'm going to make this very, very quick. Thank you to all of you. Global College, we're in the business of educating young people to live in a world that hopefully transcends national identity. And to follow up in the words of the High Commission, that is what we're doing. And the book does many things, but I think it signals really difficult moral questions for those of us who educate for global citizenship. So thank you for your work and putting it out there. I will certainly use it in our courses here. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd Carnelson, for his remarks. Let's move to our patron and advisor, David Newman, my personal mentor for over a decade, Rotary and a peace builder. David has been consistently supporting CRRIC's activities on Rohingya crisis. He personally remains present in most of the webinars and in-person seminar and encourages us to continue our work on this issue. David, floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, like Lloyd, who said, transcending national identity, and that's what Global College is playing a large part in. I really wanted to pay tribute, of course, to the High Commissioner, who's been a phenomenal leader in Canada for Bangladesh. I also want to give immense recognition to the people in government of Bangladesh that are doing something exemplary. Anyone that houses that number of people who have been displaced from their homeland and done so as supportively as they had in very difficult circumstances deserves the applause of the whole world, other sovereign states and those that do less and not nearly as much, and some not even close. I also want to give enormous recognition to the writers of this book, the research that goes into it, the people who have given time to put forward an academic kind of text, which isn't a bestseller, but is incredibly important as a valuable resource for other academics and interested people like me in these kinds of issues. I finally wanted to give great recognition to Mr. Mohammed, who is a representative of what is being lost in the realization of the potential of the Rohingya peoples in these camps. And what an example for the youth in those camps. And that's the kind of thing that Rotary International, through the Rotary Club of Winnipeg and Rotary District 5550 and other clubs throughout the Rotary movement worldwide, can inspire and facilitate. We build on and nurture the potential of you leaders, but only because of people like Kauser, Ahmed, and Halal. Kauser is a member of the Rotary Club of Winnipeg, the club that made Rotary International, and he's used that platform to achieve a regional grant from the province of Manitoba, the Manitoba Council for International Cooperation. And that has led to teaching in the right ways, in good ways, in meaningful ways, in practical ways in camp. But then he achieved a global grant, which means he pulled together, with the help of other Rotarians, funding from all over the world, all over North America at least. You get then matching funds from a major fund called the Rotary Foundation, which if you demonstrate local support and regional support, and district support, then they will match the funds that you raise. So a very significant grant in US dollars is being used to educate young people, again, in meaningful ways in those camps, thanks to people like Halal and Kauser that were the drivers of this, right? So civil society can be a big part of assisting you. And Mr. Mohammed, the kinds of things that we do is we love to support people like you to get the kind of education you have who are going to give it back to your own people. You should consider a Rotary Peace Fellowship as maybe another arm, and so should your allies and friends in the Rohingya community in Canada, as a way to expand your networks through the Rotary Peace Fellowships. And that's a fully funded program. And you can take a certificate program, which is really only 2.5 months in person, but the rest is online. And you actually create a specific project, which you develop during at least 6 months of your 1-year certificate program. So there's many ways that Rotary International can be a very strong ally to do practical things. And what we envisage is positive peace being developed with peace literacy skills in communities around the world. And what more resilient communities with greater need than refugee camp communities. So if you think big, these things appear impossible. But when you look back, what you thought was impossible becomes inevitable, right? So we're with you, and we really, as Canadians, are grateful for the country and people of Bangladesh, and we're here as your friends and allies in all the good things that you're doing. So congratulations on this publication.
Thank you, David, for again very well-rounded, inspirational words. We are seriously grateful to all the contributors. Dear audience, we couldn't keep our promise. It is 18 minutes past our promised 1 hour mark, but it was such a fascinating discussion. It was very difficult for me to interject the speakers, especially our special guest, His Excellency's very valuable remarks with regards to Bangladesh's contribution to host Rohingyas, and of course, Mr. Saifullah Muhammad's very enlightened works. In conclusion, we can only say that we can write books, possibly Dr. Hilal Mahiuddin, Dr. Bulbul Siddiqui is here, and we can write books, but it doesn't matter much on ground if it is not acted upon. We have written, these books are quite policy heavy, with an intention that our policymakers do acknowledge the crisis at its all levels, as His Excellency rightly mentioned, that we don't talk about much on Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi. And of course, in our first book, we wrote extensively about Suu Kyi's leadership role in creating the crisis itself. And in my past humble week experience in King State College and Genocide Prevention Summer Institute, I have learned one thing is that the best intervention is upstream intervention when actually genocide occurs. Dr. Bulbul Siddiqui rightly mentioned today that somehow we don't care about it. And then it falls, the whole crisis befalls upon the host countries like Bangladesh and others. And Bangladesh is not Germany. Bangladesh is not Turkey either, in terms of its economic capability, in terms of its demographic density. Bangladesh is one of the highly dense country in the whole region itself. So I will leave with these thoughts to the audience, those who will be tuning with us. And once again, a round of big applause to all the contributors, those who couldn't be present here in person, but I'm sure they are listening us from somewhere abroad. Thank you so much for being with us in this project. And once again, I would like to express my deep gratitude to His Excellency Dr. Khalilur Rahman for not only being with us for almost 1 hour and a half in his very busy schedule in Ottawa, but also being a patron in understanding how this conflict can be resolved. And on a final note, quoting from Dr. David Newman, Conflict and Resilience Research Institute has finished one MCIC-supported education project for female adolescents in the camps. Our second project under the leadership of Dr. Hilal Mohiuddin is underway, supported by Rotary Club of Winnipeg and Chittagong Metropolitan Club. So, and it is under with the Global Grant Program. And the third project that we are going to introduce and run very soon is called Remote Learning Project in Bhashanchar Island. So please join your hands in supporting Rohingyas in their education. So let's say thank you so much once again, and stay well, stay wherever you are safe. And please do not forget Rohingyas, because they need not to be forgotten from our minds and memories. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jeremy Marin, and I'm the curator of Holocaust, Genocide, and Mass Atrocity content at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, Canada. It's a privilege to bring greetings on behalf of the museum to this launch of this very important new publication, The Rohingya Crisis and the Two-Faced God of Janus, What Lies Ahead. This innovative collection uses the figure of the two-faced god of Janus as an interpretive entry point for thinking about and encouraging action in relation to the ongoing genocide of the Rohingya people. Just as Janus is associated with transitions and with seeing both the past and the future, the editors and contributors in this volume aim to place emphasis on both the historical context of the genocide and postulate active and transformative strategies in response for the Rohingya people and for host countries in the future, especially in light of intersecting challenges that overlay the genocide, in particular, the COVID-19 pandemic. This space of liminality between the past and the present is also where human rights live. The importance of human rights often becomes most clear in the face of violations. Violations both in the faraway past, as well as violations that are ongoing in the present, such as the genocide of the Rohingya people. But human rights are not only or even primarily backward-looking. They ultimately look to the future. They look to respond to violations in a manner that imagines and seeks to restore a human rights culture underlined by the recognition of universal human dignity. Indeed, in the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the drafters indicate that the Declaration is motivated in response to the barbarous acts of the Second World War that showed such blatant disregards to human rights and human dignity. But that the Declaration's ambition was to envision and articulate a world in which the human rights of everyone everywhere are respected and can be enjoyed. The call to action in the Rohingya Crisis and the Two-Faced God of Janus takes another step along this path of active response, which postulates tangible actions that can begin shaping a human rights future in the genocide's aftermath, a future in which the human rights and dignity of the Rohingya people are recognized, valued, and protected. And it is these actions that will ultimately provide an answer to this collection's subtitle, What Lies Ahead? For what lies ahead is not something that is predetermined, but it is rather a future that will be shaped by the steps taken in the present. This approach also aligns with an exhibition that the Canadian Museum for Human Rights developed in 2019 in collaboration with photojournalist Kevin Freyer and with members of the Rohingya community in Canada. As intimated by its title, Time to Act, Rohingya Voices, this exhibition emphasized the importance of looking both at the genocide itself and forward from it, It encouraged visitors to reflect on steps they could take in response to what they learned in the exhibition about the genocide and about the Rohingya people, to advocate on behalf of those being impacted by genocidal violence. The passionate actions being taken by members of the Rohingya community in Canada themselves, including documenting these atrocities to raise awareness and push for broader intervention, provided a model for this forward-thinking response. Once again, the publication of The Rohingya Crisis and the Two-Faced God of Janus continues this push towards an active and forward-looking response to genocide. To my friends, Kauser and Halal, the co-editors of this collection, and to all of the contributors, on behalf of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, I offer my congratulations and our gratitude for this valuable resource, which will undoubtedly ensure the genocide of the Rohingya people is remembered and that the world does not lose sight of its reverberations and our collective obligation by virtue of our shared humanity to those impacted by these atrocities. In closing, I thank you for the opportunity to share these few words and extend my best wishes for the rest of this program. Take care, and I look forward to having the opportunity to meet many of you in person soon. Thank you.